Okay, welcome guys. This is Motivate OTs, and my name is Tongai Chichaya. I'm a senior lecturer in occupational therapy, and I am running a series of interviews with OT thinkers, leaders in our own profession. And today, I feel greatly honored to be joined by Professor Robin Joubert, all the way from South Africa, Durban. Professor Joubert has written a lot about the history of occupational therapy in South Africa. She has also been involved in developing occupational therapy curricula in universities in South Africa. She is the former president of OTAZA being the Occupational Therapy Association in South Africa. She is also the former head of school for the School of Audiology, Occupational Therapy, and Speech and Language Therapy at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. And before I leave it to her, Prof Robin Joubert is also an honorary fellow for the OTAZA. She has been an honorary fellow since 1991, and that's a long time. So I'm sure you can already start to get a sense of who we are talking to today. But most importantly, and this is very important and very dear to me, guys, Professor Robin Joubert was my PhD supervisor. So she is actually the person who was very instrumental in me getting an admission at the University of KwaZulu-Natal and also getting funding for my PhD. Of course, I also had Professor Mary Ann McCall as the co-supervisor. I'm really grateful, and I feel so honored to have Professor Robin Joubert. Robin, thank you so much for making time. I know you are very busy. You say you have retired, but you're still very busy. Thank you so much for making time for this discussion. In your own words, please, can you just briefly introduce yourself before we move on to today's topic?
Certainly, Tongai. I just want to start by saying it was a huge privilege to have supervised your PhD. I thoroughly enjoyed working with you and the fascinating work you were doing in Namibia. A little bit about myself. I was born in the beautiful little country of Swaziland. I was born in Mbabane in the late 1940s, just after the Second World War, so that ages me. And I was privileged to grow up in the kind of freedom that I think today children unfortunately don't experience. Many children. It was a very safe country. The Swazi people are a very peaceful and loving people, and we could, as kids, we could saddle up our horses, put a satchel full of sandwiches and cool drink on our backs and ride into the mountains for the day to swim and just be in the country, just tell our parents we're going in that direction and they would know more or less where we were going. So it was a wonderful childhood and early teenagehood. And then after high school, I decided during my high school years that OT was what I wanted to do. So I trained at the then Pretoria College of Occupational Therapy. And I think some of the British OTs and other OTs in the world might know that my head of school at the time was Werner de Toy, who is the creator of the model of creative ability. Yeah. So that was a huge privilege to work with a wonderful woman like her. She really had a vision beyond her days. And I was privileged to be one of the kind of guinea pigs as she developed the model. She used to use us students to implement her suggestions and see if they worked or not. So that really was a great sort of important part of the history of my OT studying. And then when I qualified, I came down to KwaZulu-Natal, where I started working as a newly fledged OT. I worked here for 4 years in KwaZulu-Natal, and then I was invited to go and help start the training for occupational therapy at the University of the Free State. So that was my first sort of introduction to education and OT training. I was there for nearly 5 years, and then was invited again to come back to KwaZulu-Natal to start the training here. Wow. So literally for most of my life, I have been involved in OT education and training. But it's been a fascinating and a wonderful journey, because I've loved working with. I love it. Not having children of my own, my students became my children, which was wonderful. And I retired in 2013. I've also been very involved in my church. I'm a lay minister and a lay preacher there. Oh. And in my current involvement in lay ministry and spirituality is making me aware of the impact of the current state of the world on our spirituality. And that's an aspect that's developing quite dramatically in OT, and I think it's a very healthy one. So, I want to also, I think Mary Ann spoke about it too. Yeah. So I'm very, very supportive of that approach as well. So when I retired, I carried on as an honorary appointment at the university with mainly supervision of postgraduate students, which I'm still doing. Wow. And became very much more involved in my church, in lay ministry and so on. So that's been, and during this time, I suppose it's, and this links up very much. I was fascinated to listen to Jennifer Creek and Mary Ann's presentations on marginalization and spirituality, because it links very, very well with what you and I are going to discuss this morning, yeah. And that is the state of the world. And I think that as I've had more time in a retired capacity to observe what's going on in the rest of the world, I've become more and more aware of the scary impact it's having upon all of us. And this also the impact it's having on human occupation. So that's basically where we're at now. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And I mean, it's fascinating that you've been involved with all this work. I'm sure you are very proud of what you've done within the profession, and definitely in South Africa as well. Right, now let's move on to today's topic. Today's topic is an interesting one, guys. We're going to be discussing occupational catastrophe and occupational chaos. Now, I will take you back, Robin, to 2018 at the World Federation of Occupational Therapists Congress in Cape Town. There is a presentation that you gave, which you titled, and I'll read, "Where to Occupational Therapy?" with a big question mark. And then you said global occupational transformation. There are so many insights that you shared in that presentation. And I was actually surprised a few years down the line that some of the things that you were talking about in that presentation, they actually began to unfold. Or maybe it was a consciousness that you had given me, which helped me to start realizing these things. Mm-hmm. So building on to that, in 2020, you published in the South African Journal of Occupational Therapy an opinion piece that is titled "Occupational Catastrophe" with an exclamation mark. Digital revolution, global warming, unrest, and pandemics. Are we ready? With another big question mark. My question to you, Robin, is what informs your thinking? How do you come about these views?
Sure. Doug, have you got all day? No, I'll try and summarize. I think you're right. What's happened since that presentation in 2018 is that I've become more and more conscientized to the state of the world and the changing state of the world, and particularly, I think all of us now, the looming worry about global warming and the impact it's had We've just recently in KwaZulu-Natal had the most, you probably saw them on television,
Yeah,
the
I
most
saw it.
terrible flooding, which has caused massive destruction. You cannot underestimate the power of water when it is running amok, and literally thousands of people have been left homeless, jobless, houses have been lost. Food security has been affected. So that's my personal recent taste of global warming. And I think that we're going to see more and more of that. So global catastrophes are becoming much more of the day. You know, you used to have the odd volcano here and a bit of an earth tremor there, but now we're feeling this all over the world. So what's really concerned me is the fact that as these global catastrophes are not just only global warming, but others which I'll talk about later, as they become more prevalent, so they impact more vastly on human occupation. And if one goes into, you know, Google's the state of employment at the moment and unemployment as a result of all these disasters, it's actually terrifying. It's growing and growing and growing. So we're going to end up in a world in which there are going to be millions of people unemployed, millions of people displaced. And how does that impact on their human occupation, their sense of being, of becoming and belonging? So that's basically, in a nutshell, you know, how I've become increasingly concerned about the state of the world at the moment and its impact on our human occupation.
I see. So, looking at the opinion piece that you published, can you briefly talk about the 4 phenomena that you said are already happening?
Yes, the first one which I've mentioned is global warming, and that's having, not only in terms of the destruction through weather, we've also had in South Africa and I think in Australia and many parts of the world, massive veld fires that have destroyed homes and things. So global warming is a huge one. And then of course, as I say, the floods. And what this is doing, it's changing the whole agricultural topography of the world. So you're finding that agriculture, places where things used to grow are no longer growing there anymore. That's the one thing. Then the other thing is global unrest. You know, and we're rushing into it now if we look at the Ukraine-Russian war at the moment. But I don't want to just focus on that because that is horrifying. It's because of the scale of it. But we have wars all over the world at the moment, not wars, but we have huge unrest. We've got massive problems on our borders with Mozambique. So global unrest is a growing phenomenon as well. I think South America is experiencing it. And all these, in global unrest, it creates chaotic problems for the people living in the countries where it is. And we're seeing it in Britain, I think, with lots of people coming over from Africa and France, you know, as refugees seeking asylum and so on. So it's this massive displacement of people, the destruction of homes, and all sorts of really massively disturbing factors that will impact upon mental health and also physical health. And then the other thing, of course, which we're all experiencing at the moment is the global pandemic of COVID. And, you know, we've been warned by the virologists and things that it might not be the latest, there might be more that come, more pandemics that aren't COVID, but other viruses. So we're moving into possibly a world where lockdowns and isolations begin to become more and more prevalent. That we have to be aware of. And then my final one is it's not a catastrophe. And I'm sure there are going to be lots of people who listen to this and critique me for it. But I'm very concerned about the massive revolution of digital technology. It's wonderful in many senses in that it's created in amazing forms, like you and I now here, miles, thousands of miles apart, are able to communicate in this way. And in the revolution in terms of medical care and health, it's done wonders. It really has. But you know, we were mad about plastic when we invented it. It was, everybody went berserk about plastic and how wonderful it was. And if we look at the world today and what plastic's done to the world, we should be very, very alarmed. So I'm concerned about aspects of digital technology that I think are impacting quite seriously upon human childhood development, for example, upon interrelationships. There's like cyberbullying. There are some very negative aspects of it that I think can impact very negatively upon mental health as well. So those are the sort of four phenomena that I'm particularly following at the moment. I'm not saying there are probably some more that will develop as we move into the future.
Okay, thank you so much for those insights. I was just when you were talking about the digitalization of the way we live. A few days ago, I was listening to Elon Musk, the richest person in the world, and he was like, the next vision is actually to have sort of like a humanoid robot that is able to do some of the jobs that people are currently doing. And he was actually asked by the person who was interviewing him that, don't you think this will have negative impact on people losing jobs? Because then employers would then prefer to have a robot that they don't pay and any insurance and that doesn't get sick and things like that. And he was like, already we actually have a problem of a lot of jobs with no people to work on. So I guess it might differ based on what you are looking at and which location you are in the world, because as we all know, there are other places where the rates of unemployment are really, really unimaginable.
And thank you for reminding me of that. Was another aspect about digital tech, or the fourth industrial revolution, is that it has, although it's created lots of jobs, they're very specialized, sort of digitally orientated jobs. And what it's done is it's removed literally thousands of jobs that would have normally been done by humans are now being done by computers and robots, and so it is also causing unemployment. So thanks for reminding me about that.
Okay, now I mean we've spoken about all these things, Robin. Somebody might be listening. Maybe they are an occupational therapy student or an occupational therapist, and they're asking, why does this matter for us as occupational therapists? Why is it important? And what is it that we as occupational therapists can do to help humanity in the face of some of these catastrophes that you've mentioned?
Sure, it's a huge question, and I don't have all the answers to it, Tongai, but I'll try as best I can to give you some ideas. I think one of the things I want to say first of all is that I don't for one moment want to underestimate the critical role we play in our current position as OTs in terms of our intervention for people with disabilities and rehabilitation and all those aspects which have been sort of interventions for people. And the focus has been particularly on people with disabilities. But what I'm concerned about the scenarios I've just created for you is that we need to start looking at how we can act in more in a preventative manner and a promotive manner, preventing particularly mental disability from occurring because of the catastrophes I've spoken about. And also promoting lifestyles within this catastrophic environments that are going to be conducive to people recovering better and feeling better about themselves. we need to start looking at how we can contribute on a much broader global scale to making the world a more healthy place through
Yeah.
our knowledge of the impact of human occupation on health.
Yeah, yeah. In your paper, you mentioned the associations or occupational therapy bodies to be involved. Can you just briefly talk on that? What is it that the occupational therapy associations can do? Bodies like the World Federation of Occupational Therapists.
Well, I'm very pleased to say I think they're already engaging with these sort of things, because in my drawing up of these papers and things, I've obviously been reading up what WIFIT's been doing. WIFIT's been proactive as far as I'm concerned with that, but I do think we need to become collective in our decisions around this. I think we're still too much in our silos. And I think, again, I must compliment WIFIT. I think WIFIT's trying very hard to get us out of our silos. But there are some people out there, Elizabeth Townsend, of course, Wally Hamill is one of them, Rushford Thomas have done a book on disaster and development, which is very relevant. Algado and Cardona, The Return of the Cornmen, an intervention with man community in Guatemalan returners.
Yeah.
There are people at the OTs at the moment definitely engaging in this more global approach to what our role will be. And I really think that we've come to a point in our professional history and development where we have to say to ourselves, are we going to stay in our little boxes and silos?
Yeah.
And just do the sort of rehabilitation orientated things we do, or are we going to step out of those boxes and silos and become global ambassadors? And I think more than that, it's more than that, we're almost activists. We almost have to become global activists because of our knowledge of human occupation and its impact on existence, and how we can use human occupation as a tool for health.
Okay. Thank you so much, Robin, for sharing all these insights. And this leads me to my next question, which is about the future of the occupational therapy profession. I want to hear from you, and I'm sure our audience will be keen to hear your views. I know there are times when your views have been controversial for some people, but I want to know from you, how do you see the future of occupational therapy? Is it the future that you want? If not, what sort of future would you want to see for the profession, either globally or regionally?
Sure, that's a huge question. I'll try and be as brief as I can, Tongai. We've got to decide now whether we want to stay in our boxes and silos, which will be tending to be more institution-based and disability-based, intervention-based, or are we really going to move out into the global world and become globally based and more promotive, preventive-based in terms of health? And we can contribute hugely to that because of our unique knowledge about the impact of human occupation on humanity.
Are there any issues that you think for us as a profession probably we need to actually confront in order for us to move away from the silos, as you are putting it?
I think what I'm very pleased, as I've said to you earlier, to see is that I think WIFIT has been particularly good about trying to keep us out of the silos. But I think we need to become more activists. I think OTs have tended to be, by virtue of their kind of more gentle natures, and I think that's part of the selection processes that we use for selecting OTs into training, is where we tend, it's a criticism of us, and I'm part of it, we tend to be a little bit pacifist. We don't like confrontation. We like we're gentle, generally gentle, sweet, gentle people.
Yeah.
And we need to be much more activistic, because there are things going out there that we can contribute to, but we're a little bit too, I think, anxious to get involved in.
Okay.
And maybe even in the way we select students into OT courses, we need to look at selecting characteristics where people are not afraid to stand up and make statements and stand up against governments that are doing things that are wrong in terms of human existence and human occupation. So, you know, but that's a very challenging one. But I think we've tended to be a little bit too pacifist in the past, and we need to be more activistic in the future.
Okay, thank you so much, Robin, for those insights, and I'm sure our audience will find this very, very helpful. So this now brings us to the end of our session. So there we go, guys. We've been discussing with Robin the occupational catastrophe and occupational chaos that is currently unfolding across the world. I will put in the comment section, I'll put the link to the opinion piece that Robin has published in the South African Journal of Occupational Therapy, so that those who are interested can access it and read and engage more with the views and thoughts that Robin was sharing with us. So I'm really grateful. Thank you so much, Robin. Like I said, Robin was my main supervisor for the PhD, and she has really, really done fantastic work in grooming me up, in building me up, in challenging my views and helping me to think out of the box. And I remember those days. I mean, you did basically everything for me, Robin, booking flights, picking me from the airport, the accommodation. I'm forever grateful for that. So thank you so much, Robin.
Tongai, it was an absolute pleasure and lovely to meet up with you again. Although it's thousands of miles apart, it's lovely to see your face and chat to you again.